If you didn't already know, it is now increasingly obvious that President Trump's tariffs are simply an attack, an economic attack on China. Hello everybody, my name is Toby. This of course is Toby's Takeaway. Welcome back to the channel. Right now, and this isn't that important, but right now I believe it's 145% tariff on China, something like 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada for certain goods, and then 10% on other countries across the board, which to my mind, and I think you'll agree, is really obvious now. This whole thing is about China, maybe a tiny bit about North America, but it really is just about China. So why am I making this video about tariffs? Guys, I've made videos about tariffs this year, at least once before. Well, first of all, it's a really big and important topic for anyone and everyone around the world, but especially people in America and here in China. And second of all, the situation has changed. We've had many movements in the markets and with President Trump, and of course with China here as well, finally standing up to America. So what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about two things really. First of all, I want to talk about sort of the PR of it all, the public relations, what is being said by leaders of various countries, what is being said by foreign spokesmen, what is being done in those countries. And then I want to talk about the economics of it, especially the macroeconomics, although we can talk about what's going to happen and what is happening here in China and what I think is going to happen in America. So let's get started. To be honest, these figures right now, 145%, these figures aren't that important because they're changing all the time. It's literally a scenario where President Trump will raise a tariff and then China will respond. So we're getting into crazy figures. But I don't think they're that important because we're talking about the idea of tariffs and what they can do. Now, once they go to a certain point, and they're way beyond that point now, it's so damaging to the economy that I really don't think they'll be followed through with. And the reason I say that is, one, these tariffs are really going to damage everyone, and especially Americans, and of course Chinese people as well, but especially Americans. It seems obvious to me now what's happened over the last few days with, let's call it what it is, the manipulation of the stock market, that President Trump can just turn it on and off, and he can raise a tariff or lower a tariff, or he can have a holding period of time. Basically, he can control whatever he wants to do. So I don't think we're going to end up with 145% tariffs. We could easily end up with something higher, believe it or not. We could end up with something lower, or we could end up with, a 90-day pause, a 6-month pause, or, and I'll say what I think is going to happen right now, more likely we'll meet somewhere in the middle, and America, through either back channels or through a meeting with government officials here in China, will come to some kind of compromise where they'll lower tariffs in exchange for something else. That is what I think will eventually happen. But right now, America and China are at loggerheads. And to be honest, China, perhaps alongside maybe Canada and Mexico, seemingly the only countries that are willing to stand up to America. So let's talk about the PR of it first. Right now, as I've said in some other videos of mine, America is going through pretty much a PR disaster. And it's not just internationally, domestically, internally, we've literally seen, maybe not call it riots, but marches against what is happening in America right now. People are really unhappy. I mean, it was already a very polarized country, but these new economic, I don't know if you can call them reforms or economic policies, including the tariffs, are really upsetting people. So you've seen marches on the streets. People are very unhappy with it. I've seen news articles, I don't know how true these are, of like a McDonald's in France being attacked. McDonald's somehow representing America. It seems really unfair on McDonald's. They're an American company, but I don't know if they support tariffs. I doubt they would. So I've seen things like that. We've seen Tesla cars that are not being sold anymore. People aren't buying Teslas anymore in America, and I think that's started now again in China. Tesla is a huge market, has a huge market here in China, but I think we're seeing a backlash because, of course, Elon Musk has associated himself with President Trump. So now economic policies that comes out of President Trump's mouth in the American administration, that Elon Musk by association is a part of that. So people, and this is really, I don't understand Elon Musk sometimes. I mean, he is now seeing a drop in his share price and less cars being bought both in America and here in China, and that will continue because the Chinese people feel like they're being attacked. Why do they feel that? Because they literally are being attacked. It's an economic attack, but they're being attacked. So whoever's their attacker, the aggressor, America in this case, the administration, Elon Musk part of that, well, I'm sorry, people probably aren't going to buy his cars anymore. That's a really, really big deal, and that's happening now. Another PR thing that's going on is Hollywood movies. I don't know if you know this about China, but China's got a really booming movie industry. Ne Zha Er, if you haven't guys seen it, it was a great animated movie, and it's done really, really well at the box office. But Chinese movie industry has been going great for quite a while now, but every year still there are a certain amount of international movies and foreign movies that come into China, including many Hollywood movies. And I've heard that they're going to now start reducing or even completely stopping American movies coming into China. And that is a response to the economic attack, the tariffs that are being imposed on them. So those are the PR disasters that are going on. And as I said before, China is standing up to America. Perhaps only Canada, maybe Mexico are the other countries that are really standing up to America, but China is doing it. And to have a foreign spokesman quote Mao, basically, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but basically quoting Mao Zedong, saying, look, we will fight to the end, we will never give up. That's rare. So this is fighting talk from China. They're not taking this lying down. They're not happy about the situation, and they want to stand up for themselves. And of course, there's a big difference between China and America. I think it's probably one of the reasons why China gets a lot of negative publicity abroad. But of course, here in this country, it's not a democracy. China, in case you didn't know, is not a democracy. Now, there are, a lot of negatives to do with that. But one of the benefits to do with that is, public opinion matters. It absolutely matters. So when they feel like they're attacked, they want to come out and say, no, we're going to stand up to you guys. And there's a national pride that goes with that. But ultimately, if things start to go wrong here, if the tariffs really, really do hit them hard, it's not like there's going to be a change of government. Whereas in America, and we're seeing this already with protests on the street, once these tariffs, if they really do start, as I believe they will, have a negative impact on an already hurting American economy, you're going to see more and more pressure on the government, because in America, people can vote and they can say, look, you're ruining the economy, so I'm going to get rid of you. Now, right now, Trump is saying things are tough, they're difficult, but if we get through this difficult period of time, we're going to come out the other side of the rainbow, and there's going to be riches for everyone. Now, I don't know if people are going to believe that, but look, he won a big majority in America, so people are going to give him a little bit of time, but the maximum is 4 or 5 years, and then people are going to vote and say, look, you completely ruined the economy, you're gone. There's people that talk about a PR win a few days ago with the stock market, especially the Nasdaq and the Dow Jones. And I think I saw President Trump in the Oval Office saying this person made a lot of money. Who made a lot of money from that? I really, from a Chinese standpoint, I know I sound more and more socialist, but from a Chinese standpoint, from any standpoint, from an American standpoint, I almost feel sorry for some guys in America, because who made a lot of money from that stock market? A complete manipulation of the stock market, in my opinion. And who made a lot of money? No doubt the billionaires, the hedge fund managers, all of those people made a lot of money. But the people at the bottom of the chain in America who buy your Chinese-made goods, everyone buys Chinese-made goods. Do you know there's a great irony of all that MAGA, Make America Great Again, their caps, their clothes, all that stuff, all made in China. All made in China. The irony of it is nuts, that there's a tariff placed on this MAGA administration on China, but all of the MAGA goods are made in China. The mind boggles. The mind absolutely boggles. But the people that are going to hurt the most
are the American people, and I feel really sad for those guys, because they're the ones that are going to hurt the most. They aren't the top 1%, they aren't the top 6, the top 10%. It's like there's some kind of statistics like 60% of Americans are in something like the bottom 5 or bottom 10% of sort of household earning incomes and the actual financial power of America. So for them to say, because because the stock market boomed like crazy 10%, was it 9 and 12% on Wednesday when the tariffs were announced, they were going to halt them for something like 90 days. There was a huge boom. Your average American didn't make a lot of money from that. Don't kid yourselves. Your average American did not make a lot of money for themselves. So I think it's a really, really sad state of affairs right now in America, and I seriously worry. This idea that through tariffs you're going to bring back jobs to America. What kind of jobs do you think you're going to bring back? You're going to bring back people making clothes and shoes and so on and so forth? By the way, most of the shoes work has gone to Vietnam, still in China a lot, but like Nike, 50%, something crazy amount of Nike shoes are made in Vietnam. So your kids in America, you want your kids making shoes in factories? I doubt it. Let's say you do. Let's say you just take any job and have a decent wage and be stable, fine. But then the price of shoes is going to skyrocket. I've already said we've had crazy statistics for the iPhone, having like $3,000 iPhones, $4,000 iPhones if it's made in America or if these tariffs go through. So crazy, crazy prices. I could understand it if you wanted maybe robots or drones. Again, China is leading. I could sort of understand that a little bit more. But if you're trying to make those really sort of cheaper products in America, one, they're no longer going to be cheap, so they're going to raise prices for your average American, and that's going to add to inflation. And two, the wages paid, even with a slight increase, aren't going to be the great wages that everyone's expecting. It's just not going to happen. You're far better off, in my opinion, creating things, making things that have that sort of have economic advantage. So if it's cheaper and well made in somewhere else, then you can do that, right? Now, there are certain industries that I can understand you might want fenced off, maybe for military, for healthcare. I mean, COVID was already a huge reminder that certain industries are important and you want to keep at least a portion of that within your own country. Because, whether China did it on purpose or not during COVID, I'm sure it wasn't on purpose, but if they did it on purpose or not, they couldn't. There was a period of time where, for example, masks and other equipment, they didn't have enough for the rest of the world. So of course they're going to give it to their own citizens first. Makes total sense. So there are some industries where I completely understand. I think the UK could do a better job of this, where you should have some homegrown industries. But trying to get everything back into America for the sake of it, I actually think they're gonna hurt themselves more than they help themselves. And that's the PR side of it. Now let's talk about the economic side of all this, sort of bit of macroeconomics, but also let's talk about what's happening here in China. So first of all, and I think this is obvious, but I want to just make it clear anyway, America and China have a big trade deficit, not just with each other, but primarily America has the biggest trade deficit in the world, and China has the biggest trade surplus in the world. And of course, them trading with each other, there is a deficit and a surplus. Now, in normal circumstances, when this happens, the currency fluctuation, so basically the value of the currency, tends to equalize somehow. So there'll be fluctuations up or down either way to bring more of an equalized economy. Now, it doesn't always happen, but it happens to a certain extent. Except with these two countries, there's something really, really quite special about them. First of all, America, having the dollar, is basically the world's currency. So it's not just about their own trade deficit that American currency relies on. Pretty much the rest of the world has that as the reserve currency. So it is within their control, but it also isn't within their control. And the second thing is China. China, as a major exporter and being a really, really clever country, does a pretty good job of, I don't know if I should say this out loud because I think Chinese followers get upset, but they do a pretty good job of keeping the yuan, the RMB, low. So they devalue, they do as much as possible to devalue the RMB. Why? Because it helps with trade, basically export. It doesn't help with import, but it helps with
export. So they do that. Now there are many ways you can do that, but I think the most obvious and easiest way is by getting, most people suspect, is that a central bank will basically print off more money, and in printing off more money they'll devalue the currency. So that's one of the easiest ways to do it, and China traditionally has done its best to keep the value of the yuan and the RMB low. That's one thing America has been unhappy with, and has been for a while actually, but that is one of the arguments that people put forward for America being unhappy with China. Now, the American dollar, the American currency. One of the things I've just talked about, which being sort of the reserve currency. Now, every country, has its own sort of bond market, pretty much, and every country has their own debt. But America's debt, aka the treasury bonds, which is a form of debt, treasury bonds in America. Do you know who owns the most treasury bonds? So who owns the most American debt? Well, right now it's a race between China and Japan owning the most American debt treasury bonds. It used to always be China. So I think the 2010s, or not so many years ago, there were literally trillions of dollars of debt, American debt, in Chinese hands. Now that's less now. I think it's about 800 billion or so now, and Japan about the same. So they own a lot of American debt, as does, interestingly, the UK and Luxembourg. So Luxembourg, a very rich country, smart country, they own a lot of American debt as well. And so that also acts as a sort of stabilizing for the dollar, basically, as long as you keep hold of it. If you sell it off quickly, which is one thing China could do, if things get nasty, then China could sell off these American treasury bonds, and in doing so you would see interest rates in America go up. But I don't think they'll do that. A couple of reasons. One, it wouldn't be good for China either if they suddenly sold off a lot of treasury bonds. You'd probably see the dollar go down in value, and in doing so their exports to America, if they even care about that anymore, that would become more expensive, and it would probably also raise the level of the yuan. Another reason is treasury bonds, as I've already said, China holds a lot of them, but Japan and other countries hold a lot of them as well. So if you suddenly start selling them off, people are going to get very upset. Right now, today, the American dollar is still pretty much the reserve currency for the world. Now that might change in the future, primarily China talking about trying to get themselves off the dollar, a dollar influenced world, but right now the dollar is still really important, so they wouldn't want to muck around with that too quickly. Another reason why they're probably going to hold on to their treasury bonds, unless things get really, really nasty, is that China have already started to diversify a little bit. They've bought other types of American equities. So I think, is it called Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? So names that became popular, names that people learnt about during 2008 in that financial crisis with the housing crisis in America. So basically they're the sort of mortgage lenders. And why would I say that holding their equities are debt? Well, basically since 2008, and maybe before that time, basically the government of America has had to back those Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because without backing them, the entire housing market of America would have collapsed even further. So they're basically American government-backed institutions, and so holding their equities is basically like having American debt. So they've already done that to a certain extent, so they don't need to go and sell their treasury bonds just right now. So that's the economics of it all. Now let's talk about things on the ground here. Sorry guys, I've rambled a lot, but I think it's an important topic. If these tariffs, and I said at the beginning that it doesn't really matter if it's 150% or 200% or 40% or 50%, if these tariffs really do come into place, how are they going to affect China? Well, there are still many, many factories in China. Whatever you believe about Vietnam and other countries taking factory work away from China during COVID, which is true, by the way, a lot of factories, including Chinese companies, left China during COVID. A lot stayed as well, but a lot moved. Still, China is the world's factory. So if you place these tariffs on China, you're going to see a number of things. One, you're going to see rising costs. That's the most obvious, right? There's an idea in America that the Chinese pay the tariffs. Now that's not true. The importer, the buyer, pays the tariffs. That is true, and I think hopefully everyone's now clear about that. There have been many street interviews where you sort of ask these American people on the street, you say, these tariffs, who's going to pay them? And they sort of celebrate the fact that the Chinese are going to have to pay these tariffs. Well, that's not true. The importers, the American people, are going to have to pay the tariffs. That is true. But what is also a truth behind the truth is that everybody's going to have to pay these tariffs. What do I mean by it? So costs will rise in America for your average citizen buying goods. That will definitely happen because the costs of the importer will rise and they need to somehow pass on those costs. But also, they'll pass on those costs in two ways. One, they'll raise costs for people in America. And two, they will ask for a reduction in price from their Chinese supply chain, basically. And you'll have to meet in the middle. You know, if the Chinese factories and the Chinese supply chain offer nothing, then people will start to go other countries, other factories, if that option is available. And if it's not available, remember, there is no China factory. And what do I mean by that? There's no one factory in China. So let's say you buy computers from a factory in Chongqing. If they refuse to give you even a little bit of a discount, then you'll go to another factory in China. And of course there's internal competition. So they will eventually get a bit of a discount. Will they get as much as the entire tariff, especially if it's 40, 50, 150%? Absolutely not. So it's going to be a shared cost between the people here in China, the suppliers here in China, and the consumers in America. So make no mistake, people in China and America are going to lose out on this. They're absolutely going to lose out on this. And the argument, at least from people in America, is okay, Chinese are going to lose and we the Americans are going to lose as well, but at least we get a little bit of money into our coffers through these tariffs. At least we're taking a bit more money, at least the government getting more money. I would ask you this in all seriousnly, and I'm not one of those guys on YouTube who just loves China, hates America. I have great affection for people around the world, including many, many American friends. Do you, in your heart of hearts, think that the administration is going to take any excess money that they get from tariffs and use it to help normal Americans? Seriously, think about that for a second. Or do you think they're going to take this money and they're going to use it to give the richest people in America a tax break? Do you think they're going to take that money and instead of giving the richest in America a tax break, they're going to go and do some Medicare stuff, some Obamacare stuff, which we all know the current administration really, really loves, and help your average day American? Do you think they're going to do that? Do you think they're going to take that money from the tariffs and fight against these big medical insurance companies? In the news recently because one was murdered. Do not advocate murder, absolutely not. But I don't think many people had sympathy for the heads of these medical insurance companies. So do you think they're going to take that money and make life for your average working American better? Is that what you think is going to happen? I very, very much doubt it. And you know what? For all this video, 20-minute, 30-minute video, whatever it is, if President Trump, as much as I dislike him personally, I dislike his policy, and you know what? For as much as I dislike President Trump personally, for his policies and what he's doing now with the tariffs, if he were to come out and say, I'm going to slap tariffs on China, something that perhaps could be worked out on 15, 20, 30%, something that perhaps could be managed, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to corner it off so it can only be used for Americans' healthcare, then as much as I would dislike it because it would hurt people in China, I could at least understand it. But that's not what's happened. So any Americans watching this video, if you've got this far, thank you very much. It's been a tough watch, I agree with you. It's been a tough one, so thank you very much for watching. If any of you genuinely think that that's what the administration he's going to do, well, good luck to you, because it's not. And we've seen that with the stock market recently. I genuinely believe that the current administration of America is pretty much only interested in looking after the richest in America and the best off. That is all I've seen so far in their administration. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do great things, and I hope they can work out something with China, because I can tell you right now, China is not backing down. Absolutely not. And you know what? With a combination of the Belt and Road Initiative, so smart to have done that over 10 years ago now, so fostering great relations and economic relations with people pretty much across the world, started with the old Silk routes, but now all around the world. With a combination of that, with a combination of an ever more powerful BRICS, I really think that China can withstand American pressure. And don't forget, internal consumption is also on the rise. And by that I mean people within China, the middle class rising in China. So what do you guys do with a bully? Do you stand up to a bully or do you give in? Guys, let me know what you think and your thoughts and your comments below. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a long one. Hope I've said something useful, but please do use the comments below to get the conversation going. But for me, Toby in China, Toby's Takeaway, that's a wrap. Xie xie. One more thing. Best of love to everyone around the world, including our American and Chinese friends. Cheers guys. Bye bye.